Win big in 2024 with RotoBaller.com's MLB Premium Pass. It includes our preseason draft kit, 15 exclusive lineup tools, and the Team Sync platform. Get customized rankings for your specific league format. Sync your leagues with Team Sync and use our new live draft assistant. Then get customized advice for your scoring settings. Get a discount for any MLB Premium Pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit RotoBaller.com, sign up today, and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got free contests, paid contests coming to a state near you. That is a fun and unique platform. Check it out. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you another interlude episode of RotoBallers' official MMA podcast. Tap that. I make picks for all major MMA events, boxing matches, what have you, on Twitter at RotoBrady, and follow the podcast, like, subscribe, leave favorable comments and reviews at Tap That MMA Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. With me today, he is a 3-1 professional MMA fighter, but he is also 3-0 under the BYB banner. He is currently the BYB Cruiserweight Bare Knuckle Champion. He's got a fight coming up for the defending the title on April 4th against Chad Kelly. Give it up for Cub Hawkins. Cub, thank you so much for being here. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, for sure. I see that you are a Wisconsin fan. See you decked out in your gear there. As a Kentucky fan, that still is like a decade-long, like, poor memory. But no, like not a great tournament overall for the SEC or the Big Ten, really.
Yeah, not at all.
Well, so Matt, like, first off, the interesting thing about your career is your amateur MMA career goes all the way back to May of 2017. And so, you collected a lot of different fights in some solid organizations in your amateur MMA career. You fought in LFA 59 on that card. So how did you sort of get into mixed martial arts first off? And what was it like, that amateur MMA career that spanned that 5 years?
How I got into it, I just didn't know what I was gonna do coming out of high school. I knew I wanted to always be a professional athlete, and one of the kids on my wrestling team, his dad trained, and he just told me to come in, Cameron Shields, and I fell in love with it right away, and I stuck to it. I did it on my junior year, my senior year, and then I actually I think I took my first amateur fight was in 2017, like you said, and that was like a year out of high school. So
Damn.
Yeah.
So let's say the weight class that you were fighting in back then, you were at 170 pounds.
Yep.
And like, so what did it take, going into amateur MMA as a 19-year-old and collecting so many fights to kind of, because the weight classes that you fought in haven't, like, fluctuated a high degree or anything like that. But like, what did it kind of take as you developed at that age to, like, kind of grow into your body and kind of adapt your body to the sport?
It was I mean, I've been wrestling since I was 4 years old. Um, and I wrestled my senior year at 170, and then I fought at 170, 85. So it was just a little different with just like the fundamentals with like jujitsu, boxing, just because, in wrestling, those good positions in that sport is bad positions in jujitsu. So it was kind of frustrating for me a little bit because I was getting caught in some things that, would have saved me in wrestling. But I had a pretty good switch over. Yeah, there were some things that were tough, but, I'm mentally tough, and, I learned quick. I hate losing. So I made sure I learned fast.
And you capped off your amateur career. You were the interim middleweight champion for Combat Quest, beating Emmett Rigby for that back in 2021. And then, so, you've had several pro MMA fights. Your first fight too, as a pro, was against John Kennedy with a 9-34 record, which anybody else will look at and say, like, oh, that guy's only won 9 fights out of 43. Like, what does that mean? It means a lot, because that means that guy has fought professionally 43 times. And you would give that advantage to that guy over the vast majority of 19-year-old 3-0s any day.
Yeah. Yeah. That was just like you said, it was perfect. Everyone's like, "Oh, that's a tomato can," but he has that cage experience. He has that experience overall. He's been doing it obviously for a while longer than me. But I stayed mentally tough throughout everything, and I didn't really let that phase me. The record, I just went in there and did me, and that ended pretty. As you can see, it ended up pretty fast. So,
As your
turned out good.
too.
Yeah.
Well, and I didn't even plan on, discussing that fight, but then I looked at the record and I was like, that's an important note that a lot of people, from a surface don't necessarily think about. But, the interesting thing is then, just about a little over a month later is when you made your bare knuckle boxing debut at BYB 10. So it was very shortly after your pro MMA debut. So you must have known that bare knuckle boxing was something that you were going to get into before you even took that first pro fight.
I did not actually. Um, I just knew. Okay, so I took my first bare knuckle or my MMA pro debut, and then I just happened to see that year, like right after, I just seen my first bare knuckle fight, and I was like, I think I have what it takes to do this. And there was an inquiry where you can just send your stuff in and see what happens and see if you can get on. And I sent my stuff in right when I seen that I can do that. Sent it in, and then the next day I got a call, and I was on.
Dude, that's crazy. I forgot that like a lot of organizations do that to draw on talent.
Yeah,
I imagine that's a much more efficient way than having to go around all the different gyms and ask the gym owners like, who do you like for that? Like, who knows how long that could take? But
yeah.
I'm sure there's a ton of people that at least you send in a short resume or something like that, and you can get a card together pretty quickly. But it ended by first round knockout, and so, like, before that fight, was that something like, first of all, you say that, like, that was something that you looked at and said, like, I can do this. Like, so what were those characteristics that you thought that you had that it would take to be successful in bare knuckle? And then was it something that you like prepared for in a short period of time to be ready for? Or did you just kind of have to draw on, all your previous training and other disciplines?
I think so. I have always just been ready. I'm always training. So like getting ready for that fight, like it didn't take me any time. Like I was already ready for it. But what like made me think like, okay, I think I can do this is I went back and I looked up more fights of bare knuckle, and it seemed like everybody like gave up. Like they got hit and they couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take it. And I was like, you know what? Like that's not me. Like I'm someone that's gonna put on a show. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm not gonna stop fighting until I physically can't, or I win and someone tells me like, hey, you have to stop. And I was like that mentally wise, I was already there. And I ended up taking that first fight, and I just knew like I didn't know it was gonna end in the first round. I didn't know that. But I knew like no matter what round it was, I was going to come out on top at the very end, even if it wasn't a stoppage. That I was going to get my hand raised because there was no one that was going to like stop me. Because I'm not going to give up. I hate that. So it, it's just a mental game for me.
And so I assume that, like, especially based on your previous athletic background, that even though your fights tend to end quickly, it seems like you're very confident, like, if it goes the distance too.
Yes, I'm very confident. Um, I'm not going to give up. I train too hard to give up, and uh, I'm ready for it to go to distance. It hasn't gone the distance in the last four fights for bare knuckle, and I want to show people that like, okay, I have what it takes to do both. So
And sorry, I shouldn't have tagged this question on to the one two ago, but the thing is, like, did you, in a short period of time in between that pro MMA debut and the bare knuckle fight, was it like, okay, now I'm gonna train to be ready for a bare knuckle fight? Or was it more just like, I'm training boxing, I'm training, striking in the gym. I've been doing that, so I'm just gonna apply that to bare knuckle. Did you kind of have to wing it, or was it something that you tried to prepare for kind of in a short period of time?
Yeah, I've never taken a boxing class. There we had a Julio Garcia, a boxing coach that was in my gym. I just got with him. We did some, extra work outside of MMA striking and things like that. But I kind of just stuck to MMA and then just did some boxing on the side, just because I didn't want to like get away from the MMA like and lose any movements, but yeah, I just stuck to MMA and just did some boxing on the side.
And so it's interesting because I just talked to Agnesa Kirikosian, who came into bare knuckle as like a traditional boxer. And, she had held like, some smaller belts, like an intercontinental belt, something like that. And so it's interesting all the backgrounds that people come into bare knuckle from, because it is sort of a crossover kind of sport. There are definitely, it's why so many MMA fighters and why former wrestlers have success in bare knuckle, is because there's a lot of positions and a lot of techniques that it does benefit to have that wrestling background, or to at least have been in the MMA cage, and you're trying to pin someone up against the wall and land strikes from there.
Yeah. Even with like wrestling with a collar tie, it falls right into it. Like the movement, like knowing where you are in the ring. Just overall, it actually does. It's just no punching, in wrestling, and now we get to add it on. So yeah, it works.
And like now too, you see a lot of people when they retire from the UFC, or any other major organization, they're making their way over to BKFC and other organizations. And right now, the BYB heavyweight champion is Ike Villanueva. So and the roster, especially at heavyweight's full of some of those guys, that have been around to the bigger organizations. So it's very interesting that bare knuckle, in all its formats, has kind of captured something where people are coming from all over. And do you ever like, so you started off in MMA at Warrior Games and then Global Legion, um, Anthony Pettis FC, where you got a first round rear naked choke. Not even that long, about a little less than a year ago. Uh, but you get like, have you noticed that in hopping into bare knuckle, like, has it already like expanded your fan base and kind of expanded the opportunities that are available to you? Because now, as the BYB Cruiserweight Champion, and the streaming platforms that some of these organizations, the bare knuckle organizations, are on, it exposes your name to a lot more people that you might not have reached necessarily if you went through the traditional channel of MMA organizations.
Oh yeah. The bare knuckle got me into. You can see Savage Fights promotion, which is another crossover. It's boxing with 4-ounce gloves, and me and Duke Sensley Duke Sensley. He fought for BKFC. We were the first to ever do that, like promotion sanctioned wise ever. Like no one's ever put on a boxing fight with 4-ounce gloves. So, and I think that I got that call just because, you know, Bare Knuckle did that. It got my name out there, and people wanted to see me. So definitely it helps my career big time.
It's a beautiful thing when combat sports can sustain so many different professional variations, because you think back, 10, 20 years, it was never guaranteed that MMA on its own was going to survive, at a high level, and that it was going to continue growing. So now you got all these different variations, and to the outside observers too, it's like, well, what is the difference? Why box in a cage and with smaller gloves? But it's very clear from the way that the last few years have gone that there are, distinct nuances to who succeeds in what. And so, like, what was it like doing that Savage Fights, that the way that the format that fight was in? What was that like? And was there anything that surprised you about like what was different about it?
Yeah, so I did my first Savage Fights, and I went up a weight class, fought Duke, and Duke is a freak of nature. I ended up losing the fight. But what I loved about it was the difference. It's boxing, and it's 4 ounces close to bare knuckle. Um, but I felt more comfortable in it. It was like MMA, but I didn't have to worry about the kicks. I didn't have to worry about jujitsu or wrestling. So like it was just bare knuckle all over again. But my hands are a little safer without the breaks and like worrying about that stuff. And I liked it. I think it's a great way to fight. So I'm all for it. And I think I'm going to do it again this year. Later in the year, they're putting on another show, so I'll get back in there. And you're in a cage. You got your boxing shoes on, your wrestling shoes, whatever you want to wear. But it's just another sport for me, I guess.
And like you've seen over the past year too, like karate combat gets a lot of attention. This year, it seems like
Yeah,
it's exploding, and all these different things that not that long ago you would have thought like I don't know if that can really exist professionally, but like now it does, and you're getting great fighters to participate. And you got combat jujitsu. There's professional actual wrestling. It'll there'll be soon a professional league where it's just wrestling and ground and pound. Like and
yeah,
I'd still be interested in watching it, because those guys, there's so many athletes that didn't get into mixed martial arts or whatever it was because it wasn't necessarily like what they were looking to do and being a master of their discipline. And now there's something for everybody.
yeah. And that's the best thing about it. It's either you got it or you don't, and if you want to see if you have it, you can get in it. So great era that we're in right now.
And what are some of the things like specifically about being under the BYB banner that you have enjoyed or that you've been impressed with? Because you've been around to a bunch of different organizations, and I'm sure you can attest to the fact that it's very like hit or miss on a bunch of different organizations. Either they have their all their business together, that you are fighting on a specific date, that you go here and this happens. Other organizations, it seems like they don't even know, like the day of when everybody's supposed
Yeah,
to fight. So what has it been like being under the BYB banner, and how what kind of a professional experience has it been?
it's been a good experience for like my coach and like anyone that's in my corner, for me and myself. Like um, they treat me very well. They make sure I have everything that I need. If I need anything, let them know. And now I'm a bit. I feel like I'm a big name for them, and they're treating me like that big name, and I'm not getting special treatment, but I'm getting treated to where like I feel like okay, like this, they have my back. Like I'm, I know this is where I want to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, uh, and my corners say like, man, they treated us better than like some of the guys that we've cornered in the UFC or Bellator or other promotions like that. And that's good for them, like good for BYB to like, that's great, that's good for us. And they're gonna keep it's a growing sport and it's gonna keep getting better and better, especially with things like that. It goes a long way.
And I remember like when I was watching some BYB stuff and I heard a voice and I was like, is that guy just trying to sound like Mike Goldberg? And then I was like, oh, wait, it is Mike Goldberg. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's got to be cool to hear like your name said by someone who, for so many great fights. And here we go. Like that has to be cool too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I was watching UFC when I was in like middle school, and here, like I anybody knows. Here we go. Like that's Mike. And when I did my first bare knuckle fight, um, I saw Mike Goldberg like his name on like a welcome letter or something, but I didn't put two and two together. Like, and then um, I walked into the venue and I just heard him talk, and I was like, man, that voice sounds so familiar. Like, and then I look and I was like, oh my god, that's Mike. Like that, it's awesome. It's awesome to see, and like all my friends, they love the fact that Mike Goldberg saying my name and commenting, on my fights and stuff. So I love it.
And that's a dude who takes so much like garbage from MMA fans like now. And you know, there's so many good commentators in the game, but it's like people like to dump on him for some reason. But it's like for especially for people like you know in our age range, because I think like I'm maybe like a year older than you right now. It's like for people in our age range who were watching it in middle school and in high school, every exciting fight that you watch, every big Saturday. Remember, we had to go months in between pay-per-views sometimes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
every big fight was his voice. So it's like, no matter what you think of him as a commentator, like it's very possible that you know the UFC wouldn't be where it is today without that guy because he gave them you know sports broadcasting legitimacy at a time where they didn't have much.
yeah. And I love the fact that Mike's with us, and um, but having him on that in the UFC like that, and having that like right when you hear his voice, like okay, that's Mike, like and just hearing his phrases that are so popular, that'll make your hair stand up, So uh, I'm so thankful to have him on BYB.
And so I'm sure I would get a different answer from everybody that I ask, but what is the Trigon like fighting in for you? Like what are, you know, some ways that it impacts the way that you approach fights and what was it like adjusting to it first?
My my first like 2 3 fights, I never really had a problem with it. It was kind of easy. It was just another canvas, like another ring, or I fought in a circle, square, octagon, and that was my triangles being the first one. But I didn't have a problem with it. It was a lot smaller than anything that I've ever been in, and that I like that. You got nowhere to go, and if you do go somewhere, you're probably trapped in a corner. So it's like you've got to fight, and that's the best. Like the violence of it is amazing. But no, I didn't have any trouble with it until like my last fight. I did get caught in a corner, uh, but I didn't panic or anything. I got out of it, and but man, it's nothing. It's nothing nice, especially if you're in the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're trapped in that corner, it's nothing nice. But being able to trap people in that corner or just have that good control over the ring, man, it works out in your favor big time. I love it.
It's crazy because it is an arena that is designed to trap someone in a corner. You know, and so that kind of makes your approach interesting. Because it's like, all right, how do I prevent myself from being the guy that's in the corner and make him be the guy that's in the corner? Because you know, it's not like you can circle around out of it. You know, someone is ending up in one of those three corners.
Yeah, and you got to fight. Once you're in that corner, you got to fight out of it. There is no there. Like you said, there is no circling out of it. You got to fight, and you just got to have good like awareness of like where you're at, who's going to control the middle, and if you have that high IQ, you're not going to be in that danger zone of being in that corner. So high IQ definitely will help not get stuck in that corner. But once you're in it, you got to fight out of it, or else it's going to be a bad night for you.
And you're a guy that I would definitely think the BYB arena is a really good setup for because you're not necessarily a guy that wants to be fighting at a distance, you know, especially, you know, at cruiserweight or if you're fighting, you know, whatever the weight class might be. It seems like the close proximity is something that really benefits you. And that'll kind of transition us to your last two fights because there's plenty to talk about.
Oh yeah, I love the dirty boxing. The dirty boxing is my all time favorite. Um, but I feel like I'm that nitty gritty fighter that has to be in your face. But coming up with this fight coming up in a week, I'm gonna have to kind of fight from a distance a little bit, um, just because he does come on a little aggressive, and that's what I've been going over in my camp the last like two weeks. So fighting for from a distance is gonna like factor in, and you'll see that a little bit. But I'm also gonna do my dirty boxing and just know when it's right to get close, when I have to get out of it. So yeah.
And you know, it was that fight against Trevor Allison 2 fights ago now, back in October of 2023, where like some of the stuff that you can do in the full range of your boxing really showed out because what you were talking about before of guys quitting, I would also, for this situation, use a different term like wilting. You see him wilt at a certain point under the weight of your jab. It was the jab that got that done. You can see like after he had already been hurt, another jab landed, and there was just no continuing for him. So that was a fight where like those aspects of your boxing game were really showcased.
Yeah. And you gotta do it all. You can't just do one. You gotta be successful at all. And that's how you become a world champion, I think. But yeah, you just gotta apply that pressure and just you gotta do different things. You gotta show your weapons a little bit. And that jab, was working big time for me. But and the dirty boxing also worked with me. Like there was multiple things in that. So yeah, I agree with you.
And then the last fight that you had against Daniel Lurwell. And let me just click on to see his face to make. Yep, this is the dude. Dude, that last fight, it's so crazy because you look at that dude and he looked 2 times bigger. He just looked like
Oh
a
yeah.
giant, tall, behemoth dude. And at first, it kind of looked like that was a problem. It looked like he was just so big and he was throwing so many shots. But you really got creative in how you started attacking him in that fight, and you landed that one uppercut in the clinch that was the end of the fight because he started bleeding like crazy. But at first, was it kind of the same for you where you look at him and it's like, whoa, that dude is way taller than I thought he was even going to be?
Yeah, right when I got into the ring with him, and I was like, in my mind, I stay positive. I don't think about, I try not to think about anything negative, put me on the edge or anything like that. But I was like, okay, 185 pound weight class is not for me. Like, I'm gonna have to end up going down at some point because he was way bigger than me. But it's not how big you are, it's how big your heart is, and you know, I still went out there and did what I had to do. So I guess yeah, it worked out.
And I think that was even it seemed like there was a point like you talked about where it seemed like you were the one that was ending up in the corner. And it seemed like you were I think it at least took a few early shots, but you could just see at one point that you made the conscious decision to get inside. And from that it was game over because it was like quicksand. Like once you got inside, he really couldn't get out of it.
Yeah, I just had to adjust. I had to like knew he was gonna pick me apart from the outside, just because he was way bigger than me. He was applying that pressure, and I was like in my head, I'm like, okay, I got to do something. I got to do something. And I don't know when it just flipped, and I was like, okay, fuck, I gotta go. Like, so I just went, and that's how I got inside, and it it worked. So
And so now, 3 months after your last fight, you've got this upcoming. You're defending your title against Chad Kelly, 35 years old, a veteran of the sport. That's going to be on April 4th at BYB 25, Brawl on the Bay. That is taking place in Tampa, Florida at the Florida State Fairgrounds. You know it's going to get crazy in there. It's Florida. Who knows what that crowd is going to do? But so what? This is a dude, Chad Kelly, who has been around the bare knuckle game for a little bit. He came did a lot of MMA, was in some solid organizations. Has a loss to Bellator's Aaron Jeffrey back in the day in 2018. But I mean, you still have more overall combat sports experience than this dude. He's just been around a little bit, and it's been a little bit more consecutive, straight up bare knuckle. I think he had a fight in BKB. So BYB and BKB for him. So now what has been the preparation for this fight? How's it been going, and what are your thoughts on your opponent as we get ever closer to April 4th?
I think Chad's a great fighter. I think nothing really. I feel like nothing really changes for me besides like fighting from a distance at some point. I think it's going to be a cardio fight. I think it's going to come down to who has the best cardio and who's like mentally tough on that part because he's not easy to put down. I've never been put down. And on top of that, uh, he can fight, but so can I. And I think if I just, you know, put on my pressure, fight from a distance, switch it up, each round, maybe I'm attacking, I'm aggressive, and then maybe I sit back and I change things up, but keep him guessing. I wanna beat him mentally before anything. But I feel like it will go past the first round. Um, and I'll be ready for it. I think it's gonna be cardio.
I don't know what the odds are, but I know that I like Cub Hawkins by TKO knockout on April 4th. Keep an eye out for that. But now again, it hasn't even been that long since your last MMA fight, and what is a solid organization gaining prominence in Anthony Pettis FC. I think they have another event coming up soon. Um, it's been like 5 straight. It will be 6 straight fights in mostly the bare knuckle format. Are there any plans anytime soon to return to MMA?
Yes, actually. I was asked that fight on Anthony's next card coming up in Indiana, I think, or Indiana or Milwaukee. But I had to turn that down, and he's gonna put on another one in August in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and I'll be on that one. So coming up August, I'll jump right back into MMA.
Nice, nice. And that's like it's so cool to get in, early on an organization like that because those are, featured. People know when they're happening and people
Oh
watch.
yeah,
It's so much that even if you got down to the quality of it, and even if overall it wasn't as good as an organization that's lesser known, the fact is like, it's growing and it's only getting more talented with each event because people want to be noticed and people want to be seen, and that's an opportunity to do that.
yeah, and he brings in a lot of people, just off of his name. And then his brother's always there. Sergio, he's doing great things in Bellator PFL. And he's always bringing in, someone. He brought in Nate Diaz. He brought in Dustin Poirier, multiple people. And people love to see that. But he's doing a great thing with putting on great fights from all over the world, to be honest. And I love fighting for Anthony. He's a very cool person, genuine dude, and I'm excited for August.
I guess you probably would have been in middle school or early high school too. I forget exactly where it lines up when he landed the Showtime kick. And very few people were watching that event live, I think like in the middle of the week. But like still, you ask people our age range, what is like one of the most memorable things you've ever seen? I don't know, not even in the sport, in life. It is still Anthony Pettis jumping off the cage and kicking Ben Henderson in the face.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I think I was in like sixth grade maybe or something like that when that happened. And because what was that for? WEC, I think, right? Or was it for the?
WEC's last event.
Yeah, yeah. So, and you see that still as highlights, goes on like as today, just like you said. But yeah, that was amazing, and being able to watch that as a kid, man, that, and then be able to fight for him now, man, hard work pays off for real.
What a blur that must be, like to see someone on TV and then like be right there with like in the next stage of their career. That's got to be crazy. But and the last thing that I want to discuss that I try, there's an opportunity to touch on this with almost any fighter in any kind of sport or organization, is in this era where it's like now you've got like people know your name more and more. You're the BYB champion. You're winning fights in devastating fashion. People love to watch it. Now that there's more prominence behind your name and behind bare knuckle boxing, are things like crossover fights with people like have been in the UFC 170-pound division, different boxers? Is that something that's ever on your radar? Is that something that people in your position are ever like thinking about? And even if you can't like plan for it or like hardcore try to make it happen at one point, like laying the seeds or just seeing where BYB could potentially be at with that sometime in the future?
Yeah, I want to fight Mike Perry. That's my all-time favorite goal of mine right now, and I think once I grab a few more belts and, keep, keep working, keep trying to get myself, I feel like on that level of Mike, uh, there will be a call out soon. And I will try my hardest to be able to fight Mike. And it's not that I don't like Mike or anything negative or bad like that. It's just he is a pioneer. He is one of the best. And, you know, again, we keep saying it, like I've been watching him since I was in, high school and before I even knew like I wanted to fight. And now I potentially have the opportunity to fight Mike. So whatever I got to do to, get myself on that level and, meet up face to face and touch gloves with him or touch hands with him, I want to do that. That's my all-time goal in the next, honestly, I would say year and a half.
And it's funny talking about that too, because like, yeah, it's not like an animosity thing, obviously. It's just like like, let's get it on. Like, this would be awesome. And it's funny because I've always hated when people in combat sports refuse to say that. It's like people think, one, that there has to be some sort of beef behind every call out. But two, you see people miss opportunities all the time and go on 8-fight winning streaks, never get their due, but mostly because they were always saying, like, well, if I do whatever they put in front of me, we'll see how it shakes out. And it's like, man, they have a microphone in front of your face. Say who you want to fight. Like,
Yeah.
long way.
Yeah, exactly. And, closed mouths don't get fed. So of course I'm going to take it. Once I have my shot, I feel like once I'm on that level and I'm confident enough that, you know, I could go out there and put a great fight on with Mike, that's when I'll make that call. And I promise you it will happen. I'm not sure if the fight will happen, but I will try my hardest and to fight Mike.
You love to hear it. Well, folks, again, Cub Hawkins, he is defending his cruiserweight BYB title on April 4th, BYB 25 Brawl at the Bay. Check that out. Mark your calendars. Cub, thank you so much for being here tonight. This has been a great conversation. If there's anything you want to shout out, anywhere that people can follow you on social media, anything you want to say, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you guys follow me on Instagram at official Hawkins 0. And thank you for tuning in. And I appreciate any love, any hate that I get. You know, that's still good views for me. And just keep watching. I'm a big name coming up, and I'm from Chicago, Illinois.
Let's go. That's awesome to hear. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Again, Cub Hawkins, check him out. Check out other fight footage that he has on the internet. Follow him on Instagram. Pay attention to his career moving forward. And hopefully that Mike Perry fight does happen sometime in the future. Hopefully we can talk again before that, if that, when that opportunity arises. But folks, this is basically BYB week here at Tap That. I'll have a UFC picks episode coming out later in the week. Again, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Facebook at Tap That MMA Podcast. Thanks for listening. Check out everything else that's coming up this week. Have yourselves a great week. Peace.